But we are starting with the leadership chaos at Michigan State University in the wake of the Larry Nassar sexual abuse case. It has been an appalling week watching the sentencing phase. 156 women telling their stories. Think about that for a moment. 156 women. But the missteps by Michigan State University President Larry Nassar and members of the Board of Trustees have shocked many, made national headlines, provoked an investigation by the NCAA, and increased calls for heads to roll. Late Wednesday night, Simon resigned. She probably won't be the last. Let's bring in our contributors, Nolan Finley, the editorial page editor of the Detroit News, and Stephen Henderson, host of Detroit Today on WDET Radio. Gentlemen, it's good to see you this week on a week where no one can stop talking about the Nassar case, and you cannot go a day without, I think, people feeling even more sickened by what has happened in this situation and where we go from here in terms of leadership at Michigan State University and what universities around the country, corporations, even government entities should be talking about right now when it comes to what has happened within their ranks and how they deal with things or how they can't cover it up anymore. Noah, I'm going to start with you because you've been kind of beating the drum about this story. You've been writing about it a lot in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, last fall when I started writing about this, you know, calling on the university to be transparent, Larry Nassar to be transparent, calling on the Attorney General to investigate. You know, everybody's just like, huh, what? What's, you know, this story had sort of lost its appeal to the public. It's a year and a half old. Do
you think it was because no one heard the detail? That we hadn't heard a lot of the detail?
Both the Indy Star and Lansing State Journal, the Detroit News, we had all had put the detail in. You know, it'd been a while ago, but this story never caught fire the way Penn State did until those girls walked into that, and women walked into that courtroom last week or 2 weeks ago and started one by one. That and Kim Kozlowski's story on Thursday, in which she gave lie to this whole MSU defense that nobody knew anything.
Well, and I think the detail of what some of these young women had told people who worked at Michigan State University before it even got up to administration. And Stephen, I think there was something very significant about the judge allowing each young woman to come up and tell their stories and take as long as they wanted to.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that of course is what got the attention, right? You saw these stories unfold one after the other, each one just dripping with real emotion and tension, and of course that makes news. You know, I think that the institutional failure is the thing that is next to be discussed in this, and it is just legion at Michigan State University. I can't, each day, you know, you can't believe what you're hearing from these women who are telling these stories, but then you also can't believe what they're saying at Michigan State, or what they're doing at Michigan State, or what they're not doing. This has been handled in a way that is absolutely negligent from beginning to end.
So let me quote Rachel Den Hollander, who was the last woman, who was the first woman who came forward to the Indy Star in 2016 and told her story, but she was the last victim impact statement. And she said, "This is what it looks like when institutions create a culture where a predator can flourish unafraid and unabated." And that really is the huge problem here. I'm afraid that today there are institutions and universities who are saying, glad it wasn't us. Instead of going back and seeing whatever Title IX investigations we had, we need to go back and make sure that we did them correctly.
At the beginning, they closed ranks around Nassar. They discouraged these girls from coming forward. They bullied them when they did come forward. They shamed them. They shamed their parents. That was their first sin. Their second one was, once this broke, they never even tried to find out who at the university might have enabled this. They never interviewed the gymnasts who were raising these complaints. 150 girls. MSU hired this investigator that supposedly cleared them of wrongdoing. He never interviewed the victims. How does he know?
It was their own internal investigation.
How do you find out who these girls told if you don't ask them?
So I think there's been a problem all along with how Michigan State obviously has handled this, and Larry Nassar has taken a lot of heat for that, and rightfully so, even in her resignation statement. And I'm going to read, because again, I think it speaks again to the culture of closing ranks and protecting the institution first before saying, gosh, there could be something to this. She says, "Throughout my career, I have worked very hard to put Team MSU first. I have consistently and persistently spoken and worked on behalf of Team MSU, which to me says protect, deny, deny."
So, and this is not the first time we've seen this at Michigan State, and maybe as an alum of the other big state university in this state. I don't have a lot of credibility saying this, but
I don't think it matters where you graduated from, because I'm an alum of Michigan State.
There is a huge problem at Michigan State that has existed for decades with this idea of Team MSU, of deflecting criticism about things that go wrong. And this dates back to George Perlis. It dates back to Judd Heathcote. You think of the things that Tom Izzo said. I mean, the most powerful, Joel Ferguson. Ugh. There's a culture there that, first of all, is far too deferential to sports figures, and the sports programs.
Well, let's say certain sports. Let's say certain sports, because you're looking at female gymnasts here,
that's true.
Softball,
and you look
track.
at the way this. And you know, I went the first time I wrote about it. I pointed this out. At Penn State was boys in a football program, and there was national outrage.
Yeah.
It took a year and a half for this bomb that was lit to go off. But if you read the rest of that statement, Luana Simon never takes any personal responsibility. It's all about,
she's a creature
well, this happens when, I'm caught in under circumstances. This is what happens when we have a crisis at a university.
She's a creature of that institution and of that board. Think of that, the people who are on that board. Think of, Larry Ferguson, Joel Ferguson has been on that board since 1986.
Yeah. Well,
think of all
that's a
the
bigger
things,
question about when we vote for board trustees.
but think of, I guess my point is, think of all of the things that have come up in that time, scandals at that university with regard to sports, with regard to sports culture that have not been handled.
He said, Ferguson said, the NCAA won't investigate this because it's not football.
Well, again,
and that goes right to your point.
All right, so we're the ones that elect the Board of Trustees, but let's talk about what should happen next, because obviously we have Simon's resignation. They're going to be looking for a new MSU president. But what else needs to happen at Michigan State? So when we say getting justice for these young women, what does that really look like?
Well, the board has to go. This same board that mismanaged, certainly they could all step down, and the governor can appoint a new board, and that's what they should. I don't think that they will, but I'm saying that's what has to happen.
What about the athletic director?
It depends what he knew. I mean, I think that's what Bill Schuette and others should be looking at. We need an investigation.
You need an independent investigation to determine the
we don't
spread
know how
of culpability
far it went, because
here,
nobody wanted
things
to
like
know.
that.
But the
you
board,
also need,
this board should not be allowed to hire the president to clean this up.
I absolutely agree with that. But you think about who that next president needs to be. I mean, there needs to be more separation at that university between this culture of sports, this culture of Team MSU, and the academics and the management of that university. I think it's badly blurred, and it has been for a really, really long time.
This is my concern. My concern is 2 weeks from now, we move on and start looking at other things. And again, universities are like, well, at least it wasn't us. I'm afraid that we'll never continue to kind of break down, again, the culture of protection and first making the victim feel that they're wrong in this case, and protecting the institution. And again, this goes beyond, for me, universities. It goes to corporations. It goes to harassment in the workplace.
But it's particularly true at universities, because there develops this cult-like loyalty to the university, and don't say anything. But
I think you can say the same thing about corporations, though, for some reason.
At the University of Kentucky, when the Lexington Herald-Leader found irregularities in the basketball program, they got death threats. People shot through their windows. People don't want to know bad things about their schools.
I had a conversation with Bill Martin, who he was the athletic director at University of Michigan and was a board member and president of the International Olympic Committee, and so he's got sort of an interesting convergence of perspective on this particular issue. I mean, his read on it is that MSU is something of an outlier here in the way that it was handled. He's not saying that these things don't go on in other places, but I think in terms of the negligence and the length of that negligence, I think we are looking at something unusual, and I think that's portrayed in the number of victims. That's portrayed in the response, the legal response.
No,
that doesn't mean there isn't a cultural problem.
But what I'm saying is, it extends across other areas. When I sat back and I took a look at this, I said, you know what? It reminds me a little bit of the Flint water crisis, and where you had people saying, "I'm drinking brown water. This isn't right," and people saying, "No, you don't know what you're talking about. Don't worry about it. It's fine." And then them still saying, "No, something's not right here." And it was the instant protection of the decisions that were made at the institutional and governmental level that we're saving money here, this is right. This doesn't add up, but we are going to protect.
It's an exact parallel. But I think in this case, what has to happen now is this board needs to act in the best interest of the university. Step down, let the governor appoint a new board, let that board go out and hire a president who is committed to finding out who knew what and when here, and is committed to transparency. Because I will say again, MSU did not want to know what happened.
All right. Well, speaking of